almost on the polar opposite of what Intel's been dealing with over the last few years, TSMC has been an absolute rocket ship. Now, look, you and I have been more than outspoken about our concerns about TSMC. The concerns are very little to do with the company's performance and mostly to do with the dependency that we've created here in the United States and around the world for TSMC's leading edge process capabilities and manufacturing that takes place in Taiwan. And Taiwan, Pat, it's almost been 100 years. But, you know, they did, what was it, in around 1949 when China said in 100 years they would come back. Now, you know, all kidding aside, you know, China builds their economy with 1,000 years in mind. We build ours with the next election or special election in mind. So we make very short-term decisions. They tend to make longer-term decisions. That's not good or bad, but the problem is with Taiwan being so important to so many of our leading edge chip design companies is that if something was to happen, and if China did decide in less than 100 years to go back and stake claim to what they believe is theirs, we would have a lot of problems, like no iPhones, no accelerated computing chips from any of our fabless designers. And this is Intel's opportunity, by the way. This is Intel's opportunity, is to play on policy to drive more demand and more interest in building more leading edge chips in the US like they plan to do in Columbus. All right, anyways, long story to get to earnings. Company crushed it. I mean, literally, and I saw you went on CNBC. Good job, Pat. They literally crushed it.
You left me. No, I want to, first of all, I want to thank you for leaving me a slot on there. Okay.
On CNBC?
Yeah.
No, I just talk about the metaverse. That's all. That's what they have me come talk about.
Yeah.
They have me talk about real things, and they bring me in to talk about things that'll never actually mature into actual marketable goods. Kidding. So quickly touch. Huge growth, huge EPS, 76% earnings per share. Now, that kind of growth probably comes from a combination of, you know, locked in contracts, supply improvements in supply chain, able to get goods. The numbers were outstanding. Now, they did forecast to a more conservative future. So a really great result built on, if I looked at it right, and I was kind of reading, by the way, best earnings release ever. It's like 2 paragraphs, and that's it. A lot of these earnings releases, they're like, you know, books. Theirs is like literally probably 300 words. HPC, IoT, automotive, all higher margin parts of the business. Now, what does that also mean, though? A lot of the revenue and growth is not coming from devices. And that's an area that they've done very well in some recent quarters. But they are guiding conservatively. The future, they're not as confident in. And they were pretty outspoken about that. But they are very confident that they have the leading edge technology, that as the market corrects, everyone will be coming back to them.
Yeah.
The market's open for interpretation on whether or not there's an opportunity there, Pat. But all in all, given the fact that literally all we hear is doom and gloom, especially in the semiconductor, this was a bit of a bright spot.
It's interesting, and this is what I love about our relationship and our media stuff we do. We don't always have to be in the mutual admiration and agreement society here, you know?
No, of course not.
So what's funny is, and I think the Market Watch headline was perfect. Like TSMC warns, you know, misses this and that, and stock, you know, goes up. And this is part of what I love about it. And one of the things that I think the investors were really happy about, that they thought that Q2 could be the bottom of the semiconductor trough. Okay. Because we're still waiting, you know, the bubble has popped, at least short term. People aren't buying as many smartphones and PCs. I saw some research from Canalys that says smartphones were down 16% in the fourth quarter. And by the way, PCs had about a 23% swing to the negative as well. But what I think it was important, this is what I talked a lot about TSMC on, was the risks that the company has. Like, people right now are assuming that the company is infallible. But China's Xi Jinping has been very public that says he wants to unify China, and that includes Taiwan. Militarily, I believe China is better off. Again, I'm not a military specialist, but this is what the spooks in DC tell me, that China's better off invading within the next 2 years than in the next 5 because they don't have to come up against the United States' next generation weapons. It's China's latest generation versus, quite frankly, our old generation. What does that mean to TSMC investors if China invades Taiwan? And then there's, I think, even the bigger challenge, which is Intel 2024 to 2025. Intel's betting betting the farm that it can become a competitive foundry to compete head-to-head with the company. I urge everybody not to write Intel off on this. I believe that just like the U.S. Mandated that all defense chips have to be fabbed in the United States, and that's what's called the DoD Ramp C that NVIDIA is part of with Intel. It's going to mandate all critical infrastructure chips be fabbed in the U.S. That's a belief that I have. So that would extend to healthcare. That would extend to the carriers. That would extend to banking and every chip that is bought in there. Intel is likely to receive the lion's share of the subsidies, even though TSMC is building U.S.-based fabs in Arizona. Quite frankly, because TSMC does not, they kind of lost the plot. They don't know how to really talk the talk in D.C. And to be honest, they don't have a lot of friends in the United States who even know how to kind of educate them. The other thing, little fun fact for you, Dan, and the listeners, TSMC is not building its leading edge products here, but rather technologies that will be one node behind what Intel is planning on doing. And all Intel has to do, in my opinion, is get a toehold with US-based Amazon on the packaging side, Qualcomm, who has endorsed 20 angstrom, and NVIDIA, who's already committed to the DoD Ramp C using Intel 18 angstrom. All that could spell trouble for TSMC. This is not 10 years away. This could be 2 or 3 years away. So that is something that I think that investors need to be looking at on TSMC, and maybe even an opportunity with Intel.
So reminders, no investment advice here, so don't actually listen to what Pat said. No, listen, just don't do what he said. I want to boomerang really quickly because I got to bifurcate what I said, and because, you alluded that we have a difference of opinion, and we do maybe, but when it comes to TSMC, when you look at this quarter's earnings, my admiration is there, because in the backdrop of what the world is ending in terms of the semiconductor boom and bust, and you look at Micron's recent performance and some of the others, having a 76% earnings increase and a 43% revenue increase in this market is pretty miraculous, considering a year ago we were still in what was kind of considered that wild growth for semi. So this is just a bottom line fact of opinion. This is a fact. It was a good quarter. Everything you said about Intel, I agree. If you ask me, and I've been on the record multiple times where I've said a lot of people are focused on Intel's 5 and 4 and the IDM and the process. I said the biggest opportunity nobody's talking about with Intel is that IFS could actually become a massive business for Intel.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to be done, but TSMC's ability to bring leading edge here, not. Now, first of all, they're not. So that's a door opener at this point. Second of all, though, they're not an American company. And with, even Morris Chang, the CEO of TSMC, going out on the record and saying globalization is all but dead, this basically means that policymakers are going to have a fiduciary responsibility to the constituency to deliver leading edge manufacturing in the United States by ideally a U.S. company and its allies. Now, again, Taiwan is an ally, but only in the free Taiwan, not in the China, China's claim to Taiwan. And my comment about 100 years is just China tends to do what they say they're going to do. So if they said they're going to come back in 100 years, don't be surprised in 2049 if it hasn't happened yet, that China's going to come back and knock on the door and say, guess what? China's here. So anyway, I think we largely agree. Big opportunity for Intel. I do think TSMC is performing extremely well. that's the ground truth that we always call earnings. You can't go against that. But the opportunity here in the U.S., the policy and the opportunities that creates are substantial.